they have about 7 or 8 people on their roster that stand bigger than our tallest man. And with the 2 Bolins starting and playing a lot of the time for them, they played up around the rim, and you know, we're lucky to play around the net. So when you go against teams like that, you've got to do it.
Corner of the final segment this Saturday morning with Joe Todrank, head coach of the Bar Reeve Vikings. Final score last night at Lagodi, 56-54 in favor of the Lagodi Lions. Joe, first off, looked like you got a little bit more balanced scoring last night. Helms and Neff, I understand, with 18 points apiece.
Well, of course, we got down 37-19 midway through the third quarter, and then you know, we started playing some basketball. Yeah, Helms and Perry both shot the ball extremely well in the last 12 minutes of the game. Perry was hitting the bucket from about 25 feet out on the left wing, and Helms was hitting some baseline shots. So hopefully maybe things are going to start to fall in place for us.
Has practice and the team attitude been a little bit better? You know, has there been the emergence of a leader yet?
No, I don't think the leadership is there, but yeah, the last 2 days of practice, Wednesday and Thursday, we did have fairly good practices. Of course, if Bar Reeve can't get prepared for Dakota, you can't hardly get prepared for anyone because of the rivalry involved.
It seemed interesting listening to the early parts of the ball game last night. Very deliberate type offense, which I don't know if that's exactly what people have expected out of Bar Reeve this year.
Well, we started out being deliberate last night for a couple reasons. The fact that in our games that we had played up to this point in time, with the exception of the North Davis game, we got started off very poorly. We was getting down 10, 12, 14 points in the first quarter. So we tried to eliminate that aspect of the game. Plus we realized, or we knew that Lagodi's kids were going to be extremely fired up in quest of Jack's 500.
Now let's, on that very subject, let's turn the microphone over to Mr. Butcher now. And first off, congratulations, Jack, on the win last night. And did you ever think back in 1957 when you first started that you'd still be around in 83 getting your 500th win?
No, you know, I don't think one projects himself that far into the future and that far into a career. I played basketball, of course, and always had a great deal of confidence in playing. And when I began coaching, it never dawned on me that anyone could defeat one of my teams. I just had that natural inborn confidence, and but certainly not projecting it to 500 wins or anything of that nature.
Can you remember back to your first win?
Oh yeah, Shawswick got beat rather handily and taught a pretty good lesson rather early, but I'd say at least a 20-point loss. But I told our kids after that game that, you know, with that kind of effort, we're going to win our share.
What type of changes have you seen in basketball, not only in the game itself, but in your philosophy throughout your coaching career?
Well, I don't know that there has been that much change in philosophy, my philosophy necessarily. I've had to change with the times, I think. Certainly there's better coaches today, there's better players today. Kids have to be smarter basketball players because of the various types of defenses that are played, various types of zones, various types of defenses are man-to-man and combinations and presses. So, you know, kids have to be prepared for just about anything. And, you know, even though we got the 18-point lead, Joe said last night, we knew, or I knew, that it wasn't going to hold up, because when you're coaching against Joe Todrank, he's going to find some way to bring it back, even if it's to get a technical.
Joe, now, did you do that last night?
Well, that's what they say. You know, I don't know.
Jack, how do you explain, while other programs have been up and down at various times, the Lagodi program, you know, you look back at your coaching record, and there's been one losing season. That was the first one in 57-58. How do you explain the continued success of the Lagodi program throughout that long period of time?
Well, I suppose that we've been up and down also, but maybe not as far down as maybe other programs. We haven't fluctuated as much as maybe some of the other programs. I'll take your word for that. And I feel that, you know, when I started coaching, Lagodi hadn't enjoyed much success in basketball for a number of years, and the people were hungry for a winner. They gave me pretty much the authority to build a program. And in the process of building it, as I indicated earlier, I was young and motivated, and I feel that we were able to motivate the fans. They got enthused, and they were able to motivate the kids. And it just seemed to me that each group of boys that come along just take it upon themselves to be determined that they're going to continue the program and they're going to continue the success.
Now, you've been nearly to the top of the mountain, Mount IHSAA, with a state runner-up one year. Despite the fact that LaGodia, a very small school, you know, people say, well, small schools cannot win the state. They're just too small and they can't compete with the big city kids. Would you be in favor of a class basketball system if it were to be developed?
Well, first of all, I think I'm a traditionalist. I speak of tradition of LaGodia High School all the time. I can go back to when I was in high school and look at the tradition of Indiana basketball. And, you know, certainly looked at that with a great deal of pride and wanting really to support the one-class system, I suppose, the class system, the single-class system. But I just kind of feel that a two-class system or a three-class system would help the small schools. It would help maybe regenerate a lot of small school programs back to the days when we had the small school rivalries on all sides of us, you know. Of course, Bar Reeve and LaGodia continues to have their rivalry, but you know, back a few years ago, before all the consolidation, it was a constant rival almost every night. And I have a feeling that if we would get into the class system, it might regenerate some of that intense rivalry and help basketball and give more kids an opportunity to enjoy the experience of going to a state tournament. And after all, as far as I'm concerned, that's what the game is for, the kids, and the vast majority of kids in the state of Indiana.
Should it be again, projecting now out into the future, should it be a four-class type system like we have in football, or a two-class?
Well, I don't believe in spending my mental capacity to
that's limited, isn't it?
Yes, Joe, it is. I spend all my time trying to beat you.
Done a pretty good job there over the years.
In trying to analyze something that I'm not going to be able to control anyway. So I really haven't studied, you know, the logistics of a class system. Maybe it wouldn't work. I don't know. Todrank is an analyst. Maybe he knows.
Well, if I could interject there, you know, what you said, Jack, you as a traditionalist, and I am too, and I guess maybe our age has something to do with that, but I think that, personally speaking, I'm not for class basketball, but for Bar Reeve and for LaGodia and for the small schools, I definitely am for class basketball. And I think that North Davis football program this year is a prime example. North Davis, you know, football program enjoyed a great deal of success and got into the regional round, and it certainly generated some enthusiasm in North Davis.
Jack, if you were a young coach and this was the first year of your coaching career, would you plan now for another 26-year coaching career? Would you do it all again?
Well, I would probably, you know, being if I were young again, I would probably just be just as motivated and just as naive as I was when I started, and certainly, yeah, I think I'd do it again.
You look back over your career, is it possible to name one win that maybe stands out that would be your most satisfying win that you've ever had, and at the same time, one loss that maybe sticks in your mind the most?
Well, I've had a lot of great wins and a lot of disappointing losses, even though the losses have been relatively few, but and everything is relative in relationship to time. I think 1970, the final game of the semi-state, when it went down to the wire and last second where we could have either won or lost, certainly the win that took us to the state championship the first time was certainly the most thrilling victory up to that point in time in my career. 75 would have to be ranked right along with that, or perhaps just ahead of that. The many things that occurred during that season, and so I would have to put those two at the top, and we've had some disappointing losses too. Probably the one that Lagodi fans remember the most would take you back to 1963 when we were undefeated and didn't even play in a holiday tourney that year, hoping that by doing that the kids would get an additional amount of rest and time to get ready to go into the sectional tournament. And we were beaten in the championship game of the Washington Hatchets. That was the year with Junior G and Darrell Smith and some of those kids that we had a real fine basketball team, but probably not a smarter coach during those days.
You've obviously seen a lot of basketball players. You mentioned Junior G, Jim Trouch, your Trester Award winner from 69 and 70. It must be quite a feeling knowing that you, in effect, raised a lot of kids in Lagodi, including your own.
Well, I think coaches, especially coaches that've been in it as long as Joe and I have, there is a special relationship that developed between himself and the players, and each player that you have almost becomes one of your own children. You have that kind of feeling and that kind of affection for them, and it is about like raising maybe 250 children.
What motivates Jack Butcher on now that you've gotten the 500 wins, and obviously that's a big milestone to reach? What motivates you on toward whatever's going to happen in the future?
Well, I don't know. I think 500 victories is a supreme achievement, but we've got to go back to work tonight, and we don't have time to dwell on what has happened in the past. Obviously, I'm still interested in basketball and interested in helping these kids be successful. And I suppose that's the motivation. The kids have a tendency to motivate a coach many times. If the kids are motivated, then the coach can get motivated from that. Oftentimes when the kids aren't motivated, the coach loses some motivation as well.
Obviously, there's been some media attention leading up to last night's game, Bar Reef. How do you, as a coach, try to keep the kids' perspective on now thinking about Forest Park and not having a letdown following last night's win?
Well, there isn't really anything that you can definitely do, I don't think. We always have taken a low key towards things of this nature, if at all possible. Recognizing that, I think one of the kids said and made the remark last night, which appeared in the Evansville paper this morning, that they felt nervous before the game, maybe more nervous than usual. So you can't stop it entirely. Certainly the Bar Reef game was the most important to us at this point in time in the season, and we haven't concerned ourselves at all with Forest Park, and we're just going to have to go down there tonight and play it by ear, I guess, and hopefully we can get back up and do a creditable job down there.
Now, I've heard a lot of speculation, and of course it is just rumor at this time, and I don't know how much faith you put into rumors or you listen to rumors. Will this be, and I may be putting you on the spot here, will this be your last year?
Well, I guess I've probably I've probably been responsible for the rumors as much as anything else. I think Bear Bryant, I didn't listen to Bear Bryant, or I got the advice maybe late from Bear Bryant. He said you should never tell someone when you're going to retire. But it's a heck of a lot easier to talk about getting out of coaching than to actually make the decision. So essentially, we're playing it by ear. We're one game at a time, and we've got a job to do for the remaining part of this season. And after it's over with, I guess we can sit back and make that judgment then.
Now, there have been, and obviously any program that's successful will have these comments about it. I've heard comments about Lagodie's a tough place to win. The officials helped Jack out quite a bit over at Lagodi. I would say that's probably not as much a factor as just the fan support that you generate over there and the enthusiasm the kids have.
Well, you're the only one I ever heard say that. And but you know, I think when you come into our gymnasium with the state pictures and state flags on the wall, everybody, first of all, wants to beat Lagodi, and many times when they have what they consider to be fine basketball teams and come into our arena, we're going to play better at home. There's no question about that. You know, I think one of our kids said this morning that our fans were behind them more last night, and that motivated them. So we're going to play better on our floor, and I think Bar Reeve plays better on their floor. You know, I saw them play North Davis on their floor, and I thought for a half at any rate, and I thought Bar Reeve played tremendous basketball. So, you know, I think each school is going to naturally play better on the floor for a lot of reasons. They practice there. They're going to be more familiar with the surroundings. They're going to have greater support. They're going to have greater motivation. And, you know, I think that's a factor. And when they come into our arena, I think there's a little extra pressure on the kids.
One final question. It must be quite a good, pleasing feeling to you to know that in some respects, Lagodi has set a standard for small schools around the state, because let's face it, it's very difficult for small schools to get rated in either one of the basketball polls, and Lagodi has had some success in getting rated, and again, it must be a compliment to you and very pleasing to you.
Well, of course, you know, coaches are certainly not in the profession for money. They're in it for that kind of notoriety, I guess, and that kind of accomplishment. And so, yes, it is a great deal of satisfaction to know that our program is looked upon throughout the state as one of the better ones.
Jack, thank you very much for coming in, and Joe, I appreciate the fact that you called me and asked if you could bring Jack along. Had a very interesting talk this morning.
Well, Mark, I'd just like to congratulate Jack in closing on his 500th win, and I know that he's been an inspiration to me to see his team execute fundamentals the way the game should be played over the past 26-plus years. And I certainly hope that he stays around for his 600th win, but against someone besides Bar Reeve, because I think that we've fulfilled most of his obligations in his century wins.
Is that more than the 1 century win now?
Well, that's definitely true. He won his 100th against Montgomery in 1963, and he won his 300th against Bar Reeve in 74. He won his 400th against Bar Reeve in 79. He won his 500th last night. So I think that we've taken care of him pretty well.
Planned very well. Joe, thanks a lot for coming.
No, we appreciate it, Joe.
Joe Todrank, head coach of the Bar Reeve Vikings, and Jack Butcher, head coach of the Lagodi Lions. And again, congratulations to Coach Butcher on his 500th win last night, 56-54. That's going to take care of Coach's Corner this Saturday.